This presentation is about workplace stress. Now I know that there's a certain amount of stress that many of us experience. Life is stressful, but I wanted to kind of narrow down some of the things you might want to do to understand stress and then manage stress. That's really the key. My name, by the way, is Tom Haney, and I'm a health and productivity risk management specialist, because my goal is to help you to understand some of the factors that might be driving your well-being or preventing you from living the life you would like, and we'll see if we can't help in this area of managing stress. First of all, I've got too many things on this slide, but I'll tell you, one of the ways to try to describe stress is a multifaceted phenomenon that can be described as psychological, physiological, positive, negative, acute, and chronic. Really, Tom? That's what you're going to... Well, here's the idea. All stress isn't bad. That's why I said positive and negative. Some stress is what actually makes us productive. If it wasn't for the fact that I had something to accomplish today, I would do nothing. So the sense of urgency, that stress that comes with that, is what drives us to get out of bed in the morning and do our job. So there's a lot to it, and they can have both psychological consequences and physical consequences, so we'll try to deal with some of those as well. And then to define the word stressor, it is the demands, events, or changes in our lives that cause a stress response, cause us to actually have a response, physical or psychological. Now, workplace stress, we kind of define a little differently, and that is, it's the physical and emotional response that occurs when there's a poor match between the job demands and the capabilities and resources or needs of the worker. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that in every instance it means you're incapable of doing the job. It just means time to time there will be a sense of, I don't know what I need to do here, this is over my head, this is beyond my capabilities, but you eventually will figure it out. But when there's that mismatch, it causes us to feel stressed because we feel as though we don't have the capabilities of meeting the requirements of this particular obligation. There are a variety of factors that can contribute to workplace stress. This list was compiled from some information we got from people who explained that they were dealing with workplace stress. For example, workload. They simply feel overwhelmed. It could be seasonal, it could be for a particular period of time. Somebody left and they had to pick up the slack, but oftentimes that can be a concern. Work schedule or hours. Sometimes there might be a change of scheduling that causes disruption in the normal family routines. Got to pick up the kids and now suddenly we have to stay late. Mandatory overtime, all of those things for sure. And lack of autonomy. Some people feel as they don't get to make decisions. There's somebody always looking over their shoulders. They're being micromanaged all the time. Those are some of the basics that we get as complaints as to things that may cause workplace stress. So why do we concern ourselves? What's the problem? Well, because there are consequences to chronic stress. Make the differentiation. Acute stress is that something goes wrong, you just spilled your coffee on the floor and you get all anxious, frustrated, or angry. Well, that goes away usually fairly quickly. Chronic stress is when you just don't feel a relief. Every day, all day, this is hanging over my head, can't get rid of it. It's almost like having something you need to do. I need to paint the garage. And it's stressful every time I look at the garage until it's done, and then the stress goes away. So the idea is trying to understand the consequences of chronic stress. And there often are mental and emotional. Things like depression, anxiety, fatigue, aggression, substance abuse, inability to concentrate, or loss of memory. These are some of the things that we associate with people who have chronic stress situations. The goal of a stress management program is to lessen the harmful effects of stress, to reduce the length and intensity of the stress response. So I'm going to give you some steps. They're not the only ones that work for sure, but they're ones I found to be helpful for me. Step one is to identify the stressor. Be very discerning in terms of what is causing the stress. Well, it's the job, Tom. You just started with that. Well, no, is it really the job? Is it the workload? Is it the people you work with? Is it what is it? Be specific, because oftentimes those can be modified. They can be changed in some way. So finding the source of the stress is a very big deal. Hectic environment, that's an interesting one for me because I've certainly seen that a lot of times people have their high season and they get overwhelmed with so many customers and so, but you know what, then it goes away and they're back to normal. So kind of understanding the circumstances and if it's going to change and under what circumstances. And of course a lot of the stress is actually caused here. What do I mean by that? I mean your own experiences, your own imagined concerns, your own thoughts will make things stressful. That's really not stressful. It's not even happening yet. You're worried about tomorrow. You're fretting over yesterday. Live in the moment, and that may be part of the problem. So when I say it's all in your head, I don't mean there aren't stressful situations. There certainly are, and you have to deal with them. But the concept is that some of the perceptions, attitudes, and experiences will determine whether or not a particular experience is actually going to be stressful to you and cause a stress response. And of course the goal is to look for opportunities to alter the stressor. If you simply can't manage that particular stress, see if there's something you can do. Maybe a different shift, maybe a different time, maybe a different job, maybe anything, but you look for opportunities to be able to manage the stress situation. Step 2, understand your response to stress. Are you an alarm responder where you're, again, these are not just psychological, they're also physiological, because some people get a release of adrenaline, a hormone, into their system, which causes their blood pressure to go up, their hearts to start racing, palms get sweaty, the face may turn red. The idea is these are a true biochemical response to the release of adrenaline. And that is what we would call an alarm responder. And some of you may have experienced that something happened that made you instantly angry, but it went away or something. But then there's a possum responder. What's that? Well, that's the person who, when they get stressed and reach a certain limit, they close down. Don't want to talk to anybody, don't want to exchange ideas, don't want to be participatory. They just want distance, leave me alone, I'll get through this by myself. That's another kind of stress, and it's just as dangerous as the alarm responders because people have a hard time climbing out of that depressive hole. And in this particular one, what we tend to find is a sense of hopelessness or depression. Those are concerns, serious issues that oftentimes require help. So how do you change your mental and emotional state? Great, Tom, you got me an idea of what could happen, but how would I change that? What can I do about it? Well, there are some things. These aren't necessarily simple, but there are things I want you to consider. First of all, try to understand the facts. What does that mean? Try to understand what's driving the decision that's making you feel stressed or the workload that's making you feel stressed. What are the facts? And that requires listening. Be willing to listen, to understand what's happening so that you can appreciate the situation other people are in or the job circumstances. The other side of it is to explain the circumstances. That requires you to talk. Wow, communication, talking and listening. Yeah, that's what it's all about, is that if you are feeling stressed, sometimes you need to talk it out. By the way, as a guy who's been married for a very, very long time, I can tell you that these are a big part of a successful relationship of any kind. Being able to talk freely, that I'll listen to what you say, and be able to do the same in return, to tell you what I'm feeling, how it made me feel, what it did for me. Those things can dramatically change your relationship. And don't be afraid to use various resources when you're feeling stressed. Sometimes it's a little bit of an escape. You read a good book, a novel with good characters, you can relate. Go see a movie with good characters. You know what, I can relate to every single thing that person was going through. Yeah, but it's not real. It's an actor or actress. But the point is, it allows you to escape for a period of time, allowing you to readjust. Music, well, for a lot of people, music is a great way. They can use music to either gear up or calm down. So depending upon the music you like, sometimes just playing that in the background or in your car as you're driving around will help you to relax. Exercise helps for a lot of people. For a lot of people, the benefit of exercise isn't what happens to their physical well-being, although that's important, but often it's what happens to their mental well-being, whether it's the time to focus on themselves, whether it's the escape, whether it's the interaction with other people, whether it's the endorphins that are created by the exercise, but they feel better, and they feel better in their head psychologically as well as physically. Got to be careful about certain things, and that is, if your escape is using your friends, you have a friend that you can communicate with, that's great. But if you only communicate with them to tell them your problems, eventually they're going to stop wanting to listen. Got to understand that then you overuse them, they'll disappear. Another one, what? It's everybody's friend. Well, food. You know, it's always there. We even have a term we call comfort food. What does that mean? Well, the point is, food can, in fact, be positive. Having a nice meal, sharing it with people, breaking bread with somebody might really help to change a relationship. But the problem is, overuse that one, and it's a whole set of negative circumstances on its own. Sleep, of course, it's important, but you can't sleep away problems or stresses. Can't just use sleep as your escape. Got to be getting adequate amounts of sleep, but not just going to sleep every time you feel stressed. Sometimes, step 4 is to think about your interpersonal skills. Are you part of the cause of the stress? If the stress is another person, and that's often the case, is it because of something that you do, how you interact with them? So for example, sometimes it's important to be assertive, not aggressive, but making it clear what you need, want, and desire so that they know that and they can respond accordingly. You also sometimes have to set boundaries. In life, you tend to get what you allow. If you have no boundaries, you'll always do what anybody asks you to do, well, you're always going to be the one who's asked. So set boundaries makes sense. Consider your communication style. If you tend to overtalk things, if you want to tell hour by hour everything that happened on your 2-week vacation, people are going to get tired of hearing that stuff. Think about your communication style. If you're always right, well, I don't think you're right. If you're always defending your position instead of simply communicating, that may be a problem. Setting the tone. If you have what is going to be a private conversation or a difficult conversation, get into the right environment. Put a smile on your face sometimes. Be a person who other people would like to hear from and have something to do. If you're always grumpy, negative, it may not set the tone well, and you already put people on the defensive. And this idea of using professional, not common language. You got to be very careful about how you express yourself. What you say and how you say it can dramatically change the interaction, the experience of an interaction with other people. And then learning to control your physiology. What do you mean by that? I mean, well, sometimes you get all this stuff happening. Your palms sweat and your heart rate goes up and your blood pressure goes up. How do you control that? Well, there are some fairly simple things. One of them is deep breathing. We do know that when you take a long inhalation, maybe a count of 6, and a long expiration, maybe a count of 6, those deep breaths tend to signal your body that you're in a relaxed state, and it tends to calm down some of those physiological changes that would be geared up from a stress. Progressive relaxation, learning to take the tension out of your muscles by tightening them and then gently relaxing them all the way up your body to actually cause a greater sense of relaxation. Meditation and yoga may be things you can take advantage of online at various courses that are available to you, but those often give you a chance to kind of get your brain in a more relaxed state. And again, I'm going back to exercise here, and that's because exercise, although it is physically demanding, tends to allow you an opportunity to bring things back to a normal resting level. One of the concerns lots of people have that cause them stress is the feeling that I have too much to do and not enough time to do it. I understand that. There are a lot of demands put on us. Work, family, friends, social obligations. I mean, there's so many. We become caretakers for our parents sometimes, caretakers for our kids, for our spouses. There's a lot of things that make you feel as though you just don't have time to accommodate all of their needs. So I would suggest you might want to really think about time management. What are some of the things you can do to actually manage your time more effectively? Proper planning is one. Know as best you can what your day is supposed to look like. Now there'll be things that will get in the way. I understand that, but generally speaking, you have a plan so that you can follow that plan and not overspend time on things that don't need it, or not give enough attention to things that desire it. And then value your time. Oftentimes an employer will ask me to present on time management, and what they want me to tell you is that time is money. Well, from their perspective, it is. But from your perspective, money will come and go throughout your whole life. That's just the way it is. But time only goes, which makes it more valuable than money, because you only got a limited amount of it and you can't do anything about changing that. So the idea is to value your time. Don't let other people waste your time. You can waste it, it's yours, but don't let other people waste your time. It's not appropriate. And of course, time is much more valuable than money is the purpose of life. So how do you learn to manage your time? Well, I mentioned before, in life you get what you allow. Setting priorities, setting limits, those are important things. Priorities are a very big deal. You should know the priorities in your work life and your family life. And if you don't know, if you write down everything that needs to be done and you put a letter to them. A's are things that are urgent and important. B's may be urgent and not important, or maybe important but not urgent. And you go down the list figuring out A, B, C, and D. The goal here is to figure out what are my A's. These are the things I really have to focus on, and then number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that means during my day, I can just check them up. Do that one, get it done, and work down the list. Making lists does help, and I do think that's part of this process. And learning how to delegate. If you're in a position where you can delegate some of your responsibilities to other people, it's not easy to delegate because you have to know that this person has the capabilities of doing the things you're asking them to do, and that you have the capabilities of giving the level of supervision they may require. If it's a fairly inexperienced person, you may have to be there a lot. If it's somebody who can do the job pretty much as well as you can, well then maybe you can just have periodic check-ins. But you need to know how to delegate and delegate effectively. Don't fear change. Change is going to happen, it's inevitable. Things change all the time, and the idea is don't fear it, but look at it as an opportunity. With change comes the chance that maybe you can do something different. Maybe something will happen that will affect you in a positive way. It's where positive things happen, is in change. So remain open-minded, seek out new opportunities, and when faced with a change, it's not time to stress, it's time to grow. So although things will change, they will, they always will, you have to look at it as, what does this mean to me, and how can I take the best advantage of this? Step number 8. Make downtime a daily practice. What does that mean? I mean, you need a chance to recharge the batteries, so sometimes it just makes sense to kind of build in some downtime. And I know it's not always easy. You come home from working a full shift and somebody's looking for you to help them with their homework, or prepare the meal, or take care of the house or something, but you need to build in some time just for you. Put your life in perspective. If you got a job, a lot of people don't. If you're healthy, a lot of people aren't. If you have family or friends, a lot of people don't. Point is, keep in mind all the good things that happen in your life, and keep it in perspective that you're probably doing pretty well compared to what could be the case. That might help you to realize you're doing okay. Goal setting helps. You have an idea where you're headed, and it's an ability to make a plan to get you to those goals. And then avoid toxins. Under times of stress, the last thing you need is nicotine, alcohol, recreational drugs. Those aren't, even prescription drugs, unless the doctors prescribe them, they're not what you really need. At that time, you need your body to have the potential to be able to handle the stress and handle it appropriately. Let me give you some basic things that I find that help in a work environment to minimize the stress. One is interact respectfully. If you're talking to somebody, use eye contact. Don't be on your cell phone at the same time you're trying to talk to somebody. Don't sound condescending. Just interact respectfully. You know what that means. You need to practice it. Demonstrate a positive attitude. Everything's not always perfect, but the idea is a positive attitude tends to reflect an outlook that is valuable to other people. Demonstrate accountability for your actions. Don't look to blame somebody else. It's not that. It is your being accountable. I did it. I'll learn from it. It won't happen again. That's accountability that we can see as a positive one. Work together with your team. Team has a concept of working together for common goals and outcomes. Work together with your team. Communicate and do your share. Have a questioning attitude. If you see something that's unfair, unsafe, unhealthy, say something. You can't go through life with blinders on. If things need attention, it might be up to you to call attention to them. Communicate clearly and directly. Communication is a very big deal, and the idea is to be able to listen and talk and speak in a way that other people understand your perspective and that you understand theirs. You're truly listening. I've asked people before in communication, what's more important? What somebody says or what you hear and understand? I think to some degree what you hear and understand may be equally as important as what's said, which means you have to be an active listener. Don't interrupt. Let them say what they need to say. Don't be looking to think about what the next thing you're going to say is. Listen and try to understand what point they're trying to make and how it affects you. And then follow the rules. People who break the rules make everybody feel uncomfortable, especially if they get away with it because it feels unfair. So these are some basic things that you might do in a work environment to try to keep things from becoming stressful. But just take one step at a time. That's really all you can do. That's the idea. Stress is concern for us. We want it to be a concern that you can manage. Thank you for your attention.